Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving into one of the most extraordinary literary achievements in history, the second part of Don Quixote, published in 1615 by Miguel de Cervantes. If you thought the first part was wild, wait until you see what happens when our delusional knight becomes a literary celebrity within his own story. This is metafiction before metafiction was even a thing. Part 2 is darker, wiser, and even more brilliant than the first. By the end of this video, you'll understand why Don Quixote is considered the first modern novel. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss our book summaries. Part 2 begins about a month after the end of Part 1. But here's where things get fascinating. Many characters in this book have already read Part 1 of Don Quixote's adventures. This creates an incredible metatextual situation where the fictional characters are aware of their own fictional fame. Even more remarkably, in 1614, a fake sequel to Don Quixote was published by someone using the pseudonym Alonso Fernandez de Avellaneda. Cervantes was so angered by this unauthorized sequel that he incorporated it into his own Part 2, having Don Quixote himself discover and denounce the false book. This makes Part 2 one of the earliest examples of metafiction in literature. Don Quixote has been home for a month, but his madness hasn't improved. When Sancho Panza tells him about the published book containing their adventures, Don Quixote is thrilled, convinced that some sage enchanter has recorded his noble deeds. Enter Samson Carrasco, a young university graduate who has read the book. Instead of helping cure Don Quixote, he actually encourages him to embark on a third journey. The priest and barber have secretly instructed Samson to defeat Don Quixote in combat and force him to return home. But this plan doesn't work out as expected. Don Quixote and Sancho set out for El Toboso to receive Dulcinea's blessing before beginning their adventures. But there's a problem. Sancho has never actually seen Dulcinea because she doesn't exist the way Don Quixote imagines her. She's really just a peasant girl named Aldonza Lorenzo. In a moment of panic and brilliance, Sancho decides to trick his master. When he sees 3 peasant girls riding on donkeys, he presents one of them as the enchanted Dulcinea. Don Quixote is horrified. Instead of the beautiful princess he imagines, he sees only an ugly, garlic-smelling peasant girl. But rather than accepting reality, Don Quixote convinces himself that evil enchanters have transformed his beloved Dulcinea into a peasant to torment him. This enchantment becomes a major plot point that drives much of the rest of the story. The Duke and Duchess later tell Sancho he must give himself 3,300 lashes to break the curse on Dulcinea. Don Quixote encounters the Knight of the Mirrors, also called the Knight of the Forest, who challenges him to combat. The knight boasts that he has already defeated the great Don Quixote de la Mancha, which infuriates our hero. Against all odds, Don Quixote wins the battle. When the defeated knight's visor is removed, it's revealed to be Samson Carrasco in disguise. His plan was to defeat Don Quixote and force him home, but it backfired completely. Don Quixote, of course, refuses to believe his eyes. He insists that enchanters have made the defeated knight look like Carrasco to confuse him. The furious and humiliated Samson Carrasco swears revenge, setting up a crucial confrontation that will come later in the story. Don Quixote and Sancho meet a Duke and Duchess who have read about their adventures and are entertained by their antics. Unlike previous characters who simply thought Don Quixote was mad, these nobles decide to have fun at their expense by staging elaborate pranks that play into Don Quixote's delusions. The Duke and Duchess treat Don Quixote according to chivalric traditions, which convinces him he's finally being recognized as a true knight-errant. They organize multiple elaborate tricks and theatrical performances. One of the most memorable pranks involves the Countess Trifaldi, the dolorous duenna who arrives with a dozen waiting women, all sporting long beards. She tells Don Quixote that an evil enchanter named Malambruno has cursed them and only he can save them by riding a magical flying wooden horse named Clavileño. Don Quixote and Sancho are blindfolded and seated on the wooden horse. The Duke's servants use bellows to create wind and light fibers to create heat, making the pair believe they're flying high through the atmosphere. In reality, the horse never moves. Eventually, explosives are set off near the horse to simulate a crash landing. The adventure ends with both Don Quixote and Sancho convinced they've flown to distant lands, though Sancho later claims he peeked under his blindfold and saw the earth below looking tiny. This episode brilliantly shows how reality and illusion have become completely intertwined. The Duke fulfills Don Quixote's long-standing promise to Sancho by making him governor of what he's told is the island of Barataria, though it's actually just a town on the Duke's estate. Before Sancho leaves, Don Quixote gives him wisdom on how to govern. His advice includes fear God, for the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. A man should consider what he has been and endeavor to know himself. Let the tears of the poor find more compassion, but not more justice than the representations of the rich. Surprisingly, Sancho proves to be an excellent governor. Despite being presented with absurd disputes designed to mock him, he shows remarkable wisdom and common sense in his judgments. His decisions are marked by natural justice and understanding of human nature. However, the Duke's servants continued to play tricks on him, including staging a fake enemy invasion. After about a week in office and enduring various pranks, including severe dietary restrictions imposed by a false doctor, Sancho decides he's had enough. He gives up the governorship, preferring his simple life to the burdens and deceptions of power. Meanwhile, Don Quixote endures his own tricks at the palace, including the attention of a maid named Altisidora, who pretends to be in love with him. Later, they stage her fake death, claiming Sancho must be pricked with pins to revive her. Before meeting the Duke and Duchess, Don Quixote experiences one of the most mysterious and debated episodes in the entire novel, his descent into the cave of Montesinos. Lowered by rope into the cave, Don Quixote falls asleep. His companions wait for about half an hour before pulling him up, only to find him still sleeping. When they finally wake him, Don Quixote insists he's been in the cave for 3 days and 3 nights. He describes an incredible vision. He found himself in a beautiful meadow with a crystal palace. There, he met the enchanted knight Montesinos himself, who showed him the still-living Durandarte, a knight whose heart was removed to be given to his lady Belerma. Most significantly, he claims to have seen Dulcinea in her enchanted peasant form, even asking him for money. The narrator explicitly states doubt about whether this experience was real or a dream. This ambiguity is crucial. It represents Don Quixote beginning to question his own reality. The experience transforms him, making him more introspective and less certain about his quest. Don Quixote and Sancho originally planned to travel to Zaragoza for a jousting tournament. However, in chapter 59, they encounter 2 men reading a recently published book, Avelanida's false sequel to Don Quixote. Don Quixote is outraged by how he's portrayed in this fake book, particularly the claim that he's no longer in love with Dulcinea. To prove the book is false, he immediately changes his plans and decides to go to Barcelona instead of Zaragoza. This way, he can demonstrate that the events in the false book, which had him going to Zaragoza, are lies. This metatextual moment is extraordinary. A fictional character reading a false version of his own adventures and taking action to disprove it. Later, Don Quixote even meets Don Alvaro Tarfe, a character from Avelanida's book, and gets him to sign an affidavit stating that he has never met the real Don Quixote before. With the help of the noble outlaw Roque Guiñar, Don Quixote and Sancho arrive in Barcelona. The city amazes them with its beauty, ships, and printing presses. They visit the galleys in the harbor, where Sancho is tossed around by the galley slaves as a prank. During their visit, they witness the capture of a Moorish pirate ship. The captain turns out to be Ana Felix, a Christian woman who had been exiled as a Moor and was returning to recover buried treasure. Sancho's friend Ricot, whom they met earlier in their travels, recognizes her as his daughter, creating an emotional reunion. They also visit a printing house where Don Quixote condemns copies of the false Avellaneda sequel as fit only for burning. One morning while riding through Barcelona, Don Quixote encounters the Knight of the White Moon, who challenges him to combat. The terms are clear. If Don Quixote loses, he must return home and abandon knight-errantry for 1 year. Despite his best efforts, Don Quixote is defeated. The knight knocks both Don Quixote and Rocinante to the ground. True to the chivalric code, Don Quixote accepts the terms of his defeat. The Knight of the White Moon is later revealed to be Samson Carrasco in disguise, finally achieving his goal of forcing Don Quixote to return home. However, the victory is bittersweet. By this point, Carrasco's revenge seems almost cruel, as Don Quixote has become a more sympathetic and self-aware figure. On their journey home, Sancho pretends to administer the required lashes to himself to disenchant Dulcinea, though he actually strikes trees instead. This final deception shows how the relationship between master and squire has evolved. Sancho now protects Don Quixote's illusions out of love rather than opportunism. They return to the Duke and Duchess's palace briefly, where more pranks await, including Altisidora's staged resurrection. But the joy has gone out of these games. Don Quixote is a defeated man. During their travels home, they meet various characters and have smaller adventures, including encounters with pigs and other rustic incidents. The tone becomes increasingly melancholic as they approach their village. When they finally arrive home, Don Quixote falls seriously ill with a fever. He remains in bed for 6 days, visited by his friends, the priest, the barber, and Samson Carrasco, while faithful Sancho never leaves his side. His friends believe his grief at being defeated and his unsatisfied longing to see Dulcinea disenchanted are responsible for his condition. They try to cheer him up, with the bachelor suggesting they begin a pastoral life as shepherds. But nothing can lift Don Quixote's spirits. The doctor who examines him declares that melancholy and despondency are bringing him to his end. Don Quixote asks to be left alone to sleep, and he sleeps for more than 6 hours straight. When he awakens, Don Quixote cries out that God has revealed everything to him in a dream. He now recognizes that the books about chivalry are filled with absurdities and deceptions. He sees that the life he has lived has been worthless and a farce. Most significantly, he announces that his name is no longer Don Quixote de la Mancha, but Alonso Quijano the Good. After years of living in delusion, he has finally recovered his sanity, but at the cost of his identity and his will to live. His friends are devastated by this transformation. They beg him to continue believing, to keep his chivalric dreams alive. Even Sancho, in tears, tries to restore his master's faith and interest in Dulcinea, but Alonso Quijano only apologizes for the harm he has caused. Alonso Quijano calls for a notary and dictates his will. One provision states that his niece will be disinherited if she marries anyone who reads books of chivalry. This final act shows both his recovered reason and his desire to prevent anyone else from suffering his fate. After receiving all the sacraments and renouncing books of chivalry with many powerful words, Don Quixote, or rather Alonso Quijano the Good, dies peacefully. The notary bears witness that Alonso Quijano the Good, commonly called Don Quixote of La Mancha, had passed away from this present life and died naturally. Cervantes includes this legal testimony specifically to prevent any other author from bringing his character back to life falsely, a direct response to Avellaneda's unauthorized sequel. The historian Cid Hamete Benengeli ends the novel by declaring that his sole purpose was to make people see the harm caused by books of chivalry. and to ensure that no one else could falsely revive Don Quixote. Why Part 2 matters? Part 2 of Don Quixote is arguably even more sophisticated than Part 1. Several elements make it extraordinary. The meta-fictional revolution. Cervantes created one of the first truly meta-fictional works where characters are aware of their fictional existence and where fiction and reality constantly blur. When Don Quixote reads about himself, when he encounters characters from a fake sequel, when he must prove his own authenticity, these are revolutionary narrative techniques that wouldn't become common for centuries. The evolution of character. Don Quixote transforms from a simple madman into a complex, tragic figure. His journey through the cave of Montesinos marks the beginning of his self-awareness. By the end, he becomes wise, precisely by abandoning his quest for wisdom through chivalry. The Sancho transformation. Sancho evolves from a greedy, simple peasant into a genuinely wise governor and a loyal, loving friend. His governance of Barataria reveals unexpected depths of natural justice and common sense. The cruelty of reality. The Duke and Duchess represent a darker element in Part 2. Unlike earlier characters who simply thought Don Quixote was mad, these aristocrats deliberately manipulate and humiliate him for entertainment. Their pranks reveal the cruelty that can hide behind civility and the vulnerability of those who live by different rules. The question of idealism. The novel ultimately asks whether it's better to live with inspiring illusions or disillusioning truths. Don Quixote's death immediately follows his recovery of sanity, suggesting that perhaps we need our dreams to survive. Once the knight-errant within him dies, the man cannot live. Don Quixote. Part 2 is more than just a sequel. It's a profound meditation on identity, reality, and the power of stories to shape our lives. Cervantes gave us a character who became more real than many actual people, whose name has become synonymous with idealistic but impractical dreamers. The novel asks us to consider, is Don Quixote mad for believing in noble ideals in a corrupt world, or is the world mad for abandoning them? When Alonso Quijano recovers his sanity but loses his life, has he gained wisdom or lost everything that made life worth living? These questions make Don Quixote eternally relevant, speaking to each generation about the eternal conflict between dreams and reality, between who we are and who we wish to be. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this summary, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and let us know in the comments which classic book you'd like us to summarize next. Until next time, keep reading.